Hi, I'm John F. Allen. And I'm R.J. Sullivan. And we're the Two Towers.
So now we're going to get into the 2017 film. This was, as we had said before, the fourth film in the DCEU, which is the DC Comics Extended Universe, which is like the MCU that Marvel has. And it was a film that was directed by Patty Jenkins and a screenplay by Alan Heinberg and Jeff Johns. And just as to interact, Jeff Johns is a very important figure in DC Comics. He is the creator of Stargirl, which is a very popular character in DC Comics, as well as having runs on writing several of the titles in DC and serving as like their version of Kevin Feige in a lot of ways with the films and having some input. And I think that his addition to this was very much needed. And so, and that's not to take anything away from Patty Jenkins, but it's to put someone who actually understood the comics on such a deep level to say, okay, well, this is some of the things we need to draw in on the mythos and everything, because this is someone who's very much dedicated to the comics lore. And I think that was very important. This film began its development in 1996. That goes back to what RJ was saying. It was like, well, we don't think that this is going to work because no one wants to see a female-led superhero film. But it's interesting to note that
because Catwoman failed.
That was a disaster. But anyway, it's funny that they said that or thought that when there were so many sci-fi films that had female leads that did well, such as Aliens with Sigourney Weaver, and then you had anything that Mila Jovovich was in, and then you had Linda Hamilton in the Terminator franchise, and Sanaa Lathan in the Predator franchise. I mean, you had so many women heroes that were doing the big screen. So I thought it was just silly that they didn't think that they could make a Wonder Woman movie that worked. And much to their chagrin, it did work. It really, really worked, as a matter of fact. And it made its premiere in Shanghai on May 15th, 2017, and was released in the United States on June 2nd, 2017. And it went on to gross $821 million worldwide, making it the 10th highest grossing film of 2017, as well as the highest grossing film by a solo female director. So there were a lot of firsts with this film that, I mean, out the gate, people were, oh, this isn't going to work for whatever reasons they had. And I'm glad that they're
the day before it was coming out. I remember seeing those posts. Yeah.
Yeah. So this film, kind of in the very beginning, is a reflection by Diana of her origins in man's world. It starts out in present day, following the events in Batman v Superman, with her reflecting upon, her past. And one of the things that this film did was it did not adhere to the comics in setting her back in World War II. Instead, it set her in World War I. And this was something that I had a problem with in the beginning, but once I saw the film, I changed my mind. But I understand why they wanted to distance it. At around this time that this was coming out, mind you, Captain America, Marvel's Star-Spangled Hero, the first Captain America, the first Avenger, came out, and it did really well. And so they were kind of trying to distance the two characters and the settings and stuff like that. And then, as RJ and I have discussed before, punching Nazis is a great thing, but it has been highly overused. And it was kind of different to see her in the Great War, in the First World War, which was it was something. A lot of people. World War II had a lot of flash to it, but World War One was very hard. It was very um, it was bad. A lot of people, go with the flash of World War II as a setting, and I'm in retrospect, I'm glad that they decided on World War One. So we have Diana on Themyscira. She and her other Amazonian sisters are there living their lives, man free. And then here comes Steve Trevor, who just stolen some secrets from from Germany and was on escaping, the Nazis in their very early beginnings, and stumbles upon the breach from man's world into Themyscira and crash lands on the beach. And guess who discovers him? Of course, it was Diana. And she brings him back, nurses him back to health, explains to him that he's the only man that's ever set foot on the island. He, being a man surrounded by a bunch of scantily clad, beautiful women, is like hubba hubba hubba. I mean, look, if it were an island full of men who look like The Rock, women would be doing the same thing.
If it was an island full of Chris Pines, I would be like,
okay. So we're being human here.
Yeah. And let's not forget the fact that Wonder Woman was also like, well, who's this?
Right, exactly. It was like,
this is a man.
Her interest was very piqued at Mr. Pine.
Yes.
Blue eyes not withstanding, So anyway, he explains to her what his mission was, and she decides that she is going to go back to help him in this mission, because it's basically what the Germans are planning is going to turn the tide of the war, and they're going to end up winning if this intelligence isn't presented and actions aren't taken. So she goes back to man's world, and this is an entire wow, this is crazy, thing that she's experiencing all these different things, and that she has not seen, and war is just prevalent, and men are making all these decisions, and they discount her because she's a woman. At this time, when women couldn't even vote, it was just like, you're a woman, what do you know? Get out of here, get me coffee, that kind of thing. And she had more insight in war and more insight in diplomacy than anybody else, and long story short, somebody's manipulating some stuff, and it turns out to be her brother. And
of sorts, yeah.
Yeah, and they get into a fight, and she discovers, wow, my mother never told me, but I really am this powerful demigod. So I'm going to kick my brother's ass, and I'm going to save mankind, and I'm going to do it with the help of this ragtag band of guys and my love, Steve Trevor. And the acting, I think, in this film was very good. You had the chemistry of all of the actors, especially between Gal Gadot and Chris Pine. They worked very well. The chemistry was very believable. And one note about Chris Pine, it's our little thing. So RJ hates the new Star Trek movies, and I am not in love with them, but I like them. And I thought that Chris Pine did an admirable job as Kirk, because growing up with William Shatner, the Shatner effect was old for me. It was like, the stunted, dialogue, delivery. I'm like, I was over it. I was ready for somebody to just speak the damn lines. And and he did that. So, anyway, he was Captain Kirk. And this was the first time I'd seen him as an adult. I saw him as a little kid because he happens to be the son of the lieutenant on Chips in real life. Yeah, let that in your head. So anyway,
John, you cut off. What did you say?
I said that Chris Pine, the first time I'd seen him as an adult was as Captain Kirk in the Star Trek reboot. But I'd seen him as a child because he happens to be the son of the lieutenant for Chips, the TV series Chips from the 70s.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
Huh.
So it's an interesting thing. A little bit of tidbit of information about him. He's also the son of Gloria Gwen Guilford, and Robert Pine is his father, and she's a psychotherapist. She was in Beware the Blob 1972 and some other films, including Masters of the Universe,
Nice.
which is amazing.
Classic.
I mean, so it's interesting. Yeah. It's very
Speaking of great theme songs, that's a great theme song.
Right. But really,
well, actually, Beware the Blob is the less remembered sequel.
Sorry.
Right. But what really is going to hit RJ in this little bit of trivia is that he is the grandson of Anne Gwynn, who starred as Boris Karloff's daughter in House of Frankenstein in 1944. I got you with that one. You didn't know that, did you?
I'd have to go. Yeah. No, I certainly did not.
Yes.
So I would have to go look at the clip before I even knew what that meant exactly. But
right. Cool. So anyway, we've got a good cast here. I'll go through some of the highlights and then we'll get to talking about impressions of the film here.
Sure.
Got Gal Gadot as Diana, Wonder Woman. We've got Chris Pine as Captain Steve Trevor. We've got Robin Wright as Antiope. I think that's how you pronounce her name. I'm very bad with names, so forgive me, guys. But she's the sister.
It's a Buttercup.
So
it's the Princess Buttercup, right?
Right. Right. There you go. Let's go with that. That works better. We've got Danny Houston as Eric Ludendorff, one of the villains. We've got David Thewlis as Sir Patrick Morgan, aka Ares, Diana's half brother. We've got Connie Nielsen as Hippolyta, and we've got Elena Anaya as Dr. Maru, aka Dr. Poison. Lucy Davis as Etta Candy, and a few other people in bit roles and secondary roles throughout the film. I give this film an A. I thought it's the best. It's my favorite of the DCEU movies, and that's hard because I'm one of those people who really, really liked Man of Steel, even though a lot of people did not. I really, really enjoyed Man of Steel. I thought it was one of the best interpretations of Superman since Christopher Reeve. And I think that the star, Henry Cavill, was just amazing. He had amazing charisma. And so this movie edged that out of the top spot of my DCEU films favorites.
What's your 1 to 5?
1 to 5. Okay, so we're gonna go Wonder Woman 2017. We're gonna go Man of Steel. We're gonna go Shazam. That's 3 right there.
Oh, I meant on a scale of 1 to 5, like our
on a scale of 1 to 5 with.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Well, I might as well finish.
That's all right.
I already started. So,
I was gonna say, keep going.
Yeah, may as well finish now.
Right. So we got Wonder Woman, we've got Man of Steel, we've got Shazam, we've got Aquaman, and then this is going to be a very unpopular one, but it's going to be the Batman v Superman. And the only reason goes back to the fact that this was the introduction of Wonder Woman, and it had the three of them together. And that's where it is. So, but as far as Wonder Woman 2017 on a scale of 1 through 5, I'm going to give this a 5. I think that this film, when we're talking overall, I think that this has really got all the goods for me, right from the casting, the writing, the direction, everything hit on all cylinders for me with this film. And it's definitely one that I went out and bought as soon as I could. It was just like that. And I've seen it like at least half a dozen times. So that's where I stand on my rating of Wonder Woman 2017. How about you guys?
All right. Danielle, you want to go next?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I guess I would, let's see. Let me get my thoughts in order here. I already kind of said that I had doubts going into it. I was worried. I loved Wonder Woman so much, and I think like a lot of people, you kind of get this idea in your head of Wonder Woman as, for me, it's like Linda Carter, or even with the comic books, and you're just like, I don't want this to be messed up. That was my biggest thing. I just don't want it to be a mess, because I want Wonder Woman to come back into popularity as big as Superman, as big as Batman, because I like to buy the stuff. And for a while there, getting Wonder Woman stuff wasn't all that easy.
Right.
Now I have a plethora of Wonder Woman stuff, and I love that. And people get me Wonder Woman stuff all the time. You never have to wonder what you're going to get me as a present. Yeah. Get me Wonder Woman, I'll be happy. But I'm sorry, but I digress. So with the movie, when the movie came out and I finally went to see it, I don't know if it was because I went into it with doubts or what, but I was blown away. Completely blown away. I have a tendency to cry at a lot of things, but I may have cried through most of that movie, just overwhelmed by how wonderful they did with the character, with the universe, with the casting, just all of it. And I mean, my God, that no man's land scene, if that doesn't hit you in any feels, then you are broken. I mean, it's so freaking powerful. And it's funny because I was watching it yesterday when RJ called me and said, hey, do you want to do this? I was in the middle of watching it. And I was like, well, yes, I would like to talk about Wonder Woman. So yeah, I was really, really happy with the movie. And my love of DC, it's kind of weird because when I was younger, I didn't quite realize that there was, gosh, I'm going to kill my nerd cred here, but I didn't quite realize that there was a difference between DC and Marvel. Like, to me, I was like, well, I love Wonder Woman and I love Storm and I love Superman and I love Wolverine. So I didn't quite, X-Men, I was a big X-Men kid. So I didn't really understand that they weren't all a part of the same kind of thing.
And why aren't they making a movie with all four of those people?
That would be fabulous. But but they so of course, as I got older, I realized that, oh, okay, we're not in the same universe. But when Marvel was taking off and everything was kind of getting huge with Marvel, it was great. I loved that world too, but I really like Man of Steel. I liked Man of Steel. I like Superman. Christopher Reeve will always be my Superman, but I didn't hate Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman again because Wonder Woman showed up. I was really happy with that. But I was happy that we were finally getting that I felt like Wonder Woman really did kind of make people go, oh, okay, DC can do a decent movie too. You know, I think so many people are caught up on Marvel, and I get it. I mean, they're fun movies, they're really good movies, and I think DC is much darker. And I don't know that people always like that. They don't, when you see a superhero movie, you kind of want to be taken to this silly kind of fun fantasy world. And that can get deep. That's fine. But like, we need the jokes. We need more jokes than we need darkness. And that's what they want. And so with DC, it was a whole lot more darkness and not as much jokes. And I think that wasn't appealing to people. And then Wonder Woman came along and they were like, okay, we'll take the darkness of the situation because this story is so well told. And yeah, I love Wonder Woman set in World War II. I have a little bit of a thing about World War II, mostly because of the music, because when I sing at the nursing homes, that's the music I sing. I sing 40s, Andrew Sisters, all that kind of stuff. So I like that era for the costumes, for the music, for all of that. So when they weren't putting it in World War II, I was a little bummed because I thought, oh, now I'm not going to get that fix. But like you said, I do find it pretty genius that they put it in World War I. Once you see it, you're like, I totally get it. And I thought it went in a really great direction. It's such a great movie. And if you ask my 1 out of 5, I definitely give it a 5. All day, every day.
So the no man's land scene, because every woman who has offered an opinion talks about how this was an epiphany for them. I love the scene too, but I know for a fact it did not move me the way it moved a lot of women out there. Can you get a little more like what did that mean?
So I mean, you can see it in her like when she first gets there, she walks into the room with all the men. They're talking about whatever they're talking about, and everybody gets quiet because she's there, and it's like, oh, a woman has just walked in, and let's get her out of here before we can talk more. She has to go find clothing that's right for her because a woman can't walk around. And here she was living on this island of all women, being able to do whatever she wanted. Right. And nobody was, besides her mom being like, you can't, I don't want you to learn this stuff. They were women. They just lived their lives. Nobody was there to tell them what they could and couldn't do, And then she comes to the real world, quote unquote. And all of a sudden she's thrust into this world where women are second-class citizens. And so she's being pushed aside through the first half of the movie, I think. Yeah. Once she comes to the real world, up until that scene, it's like, no, we can't do this. No, everything you say, everything you want to do, no, I'm the man, I'm talking. Even in the alley when she saves Steve from the guys, it's like, even then he was like, stand behind me, I'll save you. And she's like, you idiot. Like, right. I got this. So here she is trying so hard to be like, why are you treating me like this? And they just keep saying no and keep pulling her along. She's going through the streets. The horses are broken down and they're whipping the horses. And she's like, I can do this. And they're like, nope, we have to keep moving. This child is crying because its parents are gone. And I got to go help that kid. Nope, we got to keep moving. She kept wanting to make her voice heard and they wouldn't listen. And so then they get to the trench, and this woman tells her, my village has been taken over. There's people there. They're being held captive. They're under captivity. They're struggling. I don't know what to do. Just all this stuff. And she's like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm tired of listening to you. I'm tired of being told no. I can do this. So I'm gonna. And boy, taking off that cloak is just like this moment of like, I am reborn and I'm going to be me, and I'm not going to listen to what anybody tells me to do. And it just makes you go, Yes, like, and Danielle is a sobbing mess in the theater, like, just like, yes, thank you, Wonder Woman.
Yeah,
So,
and everyone's attitude towards her changes from that point in the movie on. I rewatched it about a week ago. Yeah.
yeah, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, what should we do now, Diana? Like, yeah,
Yes,
so you
it's
please
very
tell
much,
us.
yes.
And
Yeah,
the character, I think, had a lot of fulfillment and realization, not just because of man's world and how they were treating women. This goes deeper than that. This goes back to her mother. This goes back to her mother, Dinah, you don't, need to be in the games and training as a warrior. But this is a spirit that she was born with, not just in part from her mother, but also in part from her father, who she didn't really know. So you've got all of these things shaping her to be something more than what she's being allowed to be. And this started on Themyscira from the time she was a child. And now that she's not under her mother's thumb, she's in a foreign land and with foreign customs. And then she gets to this precipice of where, to hell with this, I'm going to do what I was born to do. And this becomes that moment when she's fulfilling a part of her destiny. She's taking that step forward into who she is going to be and who she was ultimately born to be. And I think that that's a very important thing. One other thing I would want to touch upon with what you said, Danielle, is that despite all of the chauvinism that was going on, when Steve was displaying this, it wasn't malice. It wasn't malicious. It was based upon the customs of the society that he lived in, and it was born out of respect and love. And he didn't know, but then she showed him a different way, and he was like, well, wow. And I'm glad he took that lesson very well. But he wasn't he was a man, but he wasn't like these other guys either, which was a good
right. I think that is, I think it's an important thing. I think it was also a good reason. Another good thing that happened with it being set during World War I is that we go even further back to women's oppression and dealing with that. And it, watching it like that, it is interesting because, the other women around, Etta and all them, they understand what's
Right.
going on. They understand that this is just how men are. But Diana doesn't, she doesn't understand this because she's the powerful one, but they think women can't do this, but that was just how it was then. I totally understand that. And I did like that. I think after that scene in the alley, definitely, Steve was just like, oh, right. What? I forgot that I found you on this island of Amazons, and there was this big kick-ass scene at the beginning where you were all, holding your own, like, oh yeah, I should let you, But I also think he knows what it's like in the world, and he knows, like, look, as a woman, you're going to come up against this stuff, so let me try to at least help you a little bit, get to where you need to go. But yeah, no, I totally agree.
And I appreciate one other aspect of this is that they didn't. So this was brought to his attention, and he developed and grew as a character without him having to be emasculated. That's something that's just as bad, when you have to prove the point of equality between genders by emasculating a man to a point where you make him feel like he's just a complete ass, and he's less than human. That doesn't serve the cause very well, and it doesn't do much for the development of the character. I mean, I'll admit, I'm a gentleman, and I was taught to be a gentleman. I hold doors open. I also hold the door open for guys. I'm not like a woman, but I mean, if I'm coming in and somebody's behind me, whether despite their gender, I'll hold the door open.
That's called kindness. Yeah.
Right. That's called being polite. That's called being a good person. But if it's a woman, I allow her to go in front of me and I open the door and I help them on with their coat and, I open the door, a car door, and things of that nature. But it's not because I don't think a woman can do it.
Right.
It's because it's a matter of respect and reverence for her. And it's one of those situations where some people take that to the extreme and think, well, I'm doing this because, you're just a woman. No, I'm doing this because you're a woman and you deserve my respect. And there's a big difference between them. A lot of people get those things confused, or they end up, wanting to bash men because, of this. And I think that this film did a very good job in not emasculating Steve, and I think that I appreciated that a lot more.
Well, Lyle Wagner took it well. We'll put it that way.
I was actually going to say another thing I loved about the movie that was different in the TV show was it seemed like in the TV show when the action started, Steve would just get knocked out, and then he'd be passed out on the floor, and Wonder Woman do all the fighting, and then he'd wake up and be like, I beat people up. And you're like, no, Steve, you didn't. But in the movie, Steve was a big help. Yes, she was the powerful one, but he held his own. Oh.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He held his own and,
he helped her navigate man's world, which she needed desperately to get to have the success that she does. My impressions of it were, I went in, there are certain movie moments. There was X-Men, and there was Spider-Man, the first one, and there was this one where I'm sitting here going, don't suck. Right. Literally in the theater, just like calling out to the movie gods, this has to be a big deal. This has to work. Or I just knew that in the nerd community, very bad things would happen. This was definitely one of those where I felt like I had a lot personally riding on the line as a big fan. And I must admit, the first 5 minutes or so, I had trepidations. When we've got the bedtime story with Diana, that it starts off with, I was not loving that. It's, tell me that story of our origin, mommy. I was like, is this how we're gonna do this? But once we got past that scene and Steve Trevor crashes, I really appreciated how, and I'm a big classic movie fan. I love how it felt like an old movie. There was something about the way it was presented where it felt kind of old-fashioned. And I was also going in very much rooting for Patty Jenkins, knowing what she had on the line with this movie, with it being a superhero film with a female director, and knowing that was going to be a consequence if this movie did not do well. That there would be fewer opportunities, and there aren't that many opportunities. I've been educated on that. I have someone who is very well versed in that told me about how hard it was for Patty to get this job in the first place, and what was writing on it, and what that could have meant if it had bombed. And so I understood that importance. Once the movie got rolling, and once Steve is on the island, and I saw the humor coming out, the approach that they were going to take with some of the silliness and everything. Chris Pine had to get past some of my prejudices. I'm not going to lie. I was not a fan of J.J. Abrams' vision of Captain Kirk, and I did not blame Chris for that, but that was really my only impression of him. So I had to kind of, when I heard he was cast as Steve Trevor, I was like, okay, if we must. But I have come to really, really appreciate what he brought to this first movie, and his portrayal of Steve Trevor is not at all like Captain Kirk, nor should it be. and he brings a lot. He was a big reason why the movie was successful as it was. But one of the first things I noticed from a movie perspective is when it shifts from the mascara to Man's World, and how all of a sudden you had the blues and the gritty darkness that they filtered on the screen, and the specific choice, which I'm going to give Patty Jenkins the credit, whether she did it or not. But I mean, there was a very cinematic choice to film it completely different than the first part of the movie, and the way that communicated. We're now in a dirtier world. It's a little bit uglier than the first part. And I thought that those were some great choices that really added to the starkness of the second half of the movie. From there, what I enjoyed, and I didn't remember as well, but rewatching it, they kind of they give her a team of people. And I really liked how everyone was their own individual character, and they took the time to kind of really bring that into a full creation that leads me kind of thinking and hoping like they have plans to do more with that at some time. And I don't know whether that would be a flashback or what, but I would love to see them go back and show that they have more adventures in store with that crew, because there was a lot of time spent setting that up, and it makes me wonder what they may have planned for the future. Then the movie really kicks in, starting with the trench scene, and I love what follows immediately after that, when she picks that tank up and she's able to jump up into the tower and all that. I love the way that whole thing goes together. To me, that was probably the highlight of the movie. I was surprised how far they took the romance, and then I don't think it had been spoiled for me that Steve Trevor died. That did surprise me.
Yeah, I didn't know that was going to happen.
I was pretty shocked at that. Although I suppose even if he didn't die then, it was set in World War I, so it would be kind of moot. But still, they made some interesting choices there. I wasn't quite sure what they were going to do with it, and jumping ahead, I think it paid off dividends in the second film. But everything about the romance worked for me. I thought that they were kind of playing around with kind of these male fantasy trope, but they didn't take it over the line to where it got eye rolling. I thought they managed to keep it a really good balance of, here's a strong male character who complements this superheroine without it getting a little bit much. But and yeah, I thought it wrapped up very nicely. And then it's funny, I'm feeling peer pressure, but I'm going to stick with my original rating because of the way it kind of had a sluggish start. I gave it a 4.5, and I'm going to stick with 4.5, even though it is easily my favorite of the DC movies. So there you go.
We shall allow it.
Thank you.
Well,
appreciate that.
Well, one thing that I want to touch upon before we move on to 1984 is when you mentioned about the shift from the scenes on Themyscira to the scenes in London. The cinematography changed, and it should have, because London is not the brightest place to ever be, and they're portraying it during World War I, which it was even, let's just face it, it was not a bustling, bright city. So that tracks, and I'm glad that they didn't show it in any other way, because then it would have been disingenuous. But it also goes to being in a time of war, which is dark. Those are dark and dismal days anytime you're entrenched in a war, and that foreshadows that nicely. But one other thing that both this film and the Captain America First Avenger does well is that it shows the penalties of war without being bloody.
Mm-hmm.
You realize that people are dying. Okay, they are, and you realize that they are being killed, sometimes by the good guys, but that is the cost of war, and they don't sugarcoat it. I mean, they don't show it so extensively to see a bunch of blood and guts, but you know it happens. You're seeing it happen, and it is an inescapable fact of war. Period.
Right.
And that draws into the realism and the depth of emotion that this film has, that I'm glad that they didn't skimp on, because like Danielle has said, DC Comics films tend to be a lot darker, but this was a situation where they used the darkness in the most appropriate places and in the most appropriate ways, and the film is all the better for it. I will put this into contrast of another film, which when DC decided that they were going to do something different, was Shazam. Shazam is very colorful, very lighthearted. There's the jokes, there's all of that, but there are consequences of real life. There's death in Shazam. There's things that happen, and it makes it realistic enough within that context to where all the silliness and the happiness and the jokes and the colors and all of that stuff are still apparent without it being so goofy that it just defies all logic. It makes it fun, but it makes it more realistic fun. But when you contrast the two films in terms of perception, it's a much lighthearted film, which was something that they were kind of reacting to with Marvel. But I think that going back to Wonder Woman 2017, they did an excellent job of balancing these things based upon the setting and time period and historical events happening during the film. The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by OG Nerds, a new social media community dedicated to nerds of a certain age, 40 and over, although all are welcome. Members are encouraged to share articles and links on their favorite nerdy topics such as animation, anime, art, books, writing, comics, manga, movies, music, sports, tech, science, TV, video games, RPGs, and more. Be sure to visit them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by Showtime Cinema in Mooresville, Indiana. Their friendly staff is always willing to go the extra mile to make your movie-going experience an enjoyable and memorable one. Enjoy the comfort of their new cushioned seating in their spacious auditoriums, and while you're there, be sure to stop by the concession stand and purchase some popcorn where real butter topping is an option. They're located at 300 South Bridge Street in Mooresville, Indiana. We hope to see you at the movies.